Light at the end of the tunnel for LSU running back Trey Holly. Finally, we've got an update. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. LSU baseball opens up a 3-game series against Omaha on Friday at the Box. Not the city, the University of Omaha. We'll give you a thumbnail preview of that coming up in just a little bit. An interesting list from Pro Football Focus about the top returning quarterbacks in college football for 2025, where Garrett Nussmeier fits and why I think he's too low on the list. Talk about that coming up in just a bit. But finally, we have a court date for Trey Holly. The LSU running back will go on trial July the 7th on charges of illegal use of a weapon and aggravated criminal damage to property. So let me go back and then we'll go forward. I'll remind you of everything that's going on here. So last February, 1 calendar year ago, Trey Holly, who's from Farmerville, was at home, and there was a shooting incident at the complex where he lives, where he's from. And Trey Holly was charged with attempted second-degree murder. Now, Holly turned himself into police and went onto social media and very staunchly proclaimed his innocence. In this Facebook post 1 year ago, he wrote, in part, "As you guys know, I was recently arrested on 3 felony charges. I have been falsely identified, accused, and arrested. I am 100% innocent, and the people that know me know this is not my character at all. I was not involved in the incident at all. I was at home, which is where the incident took place. I turned myself in because I was notified of an arrest warrant, and I wanted to fully cooperate." Then he went on to say, "Do this being an ongoing investigation, can't give many details, etc." But as I said at the time, and I'll say again, that's what you want to hear. Like, if somebody accuses me of crime I didn't commit, I'm going, "Hey, I didn't do nothing. What y'all doing? No. You got the wrong guy. It ain't me. Y'all better go do some investigation. I didn't do what you're saying I did." Like, you are staunchly defending yourself. And that's what he did. Now, remember, we live in a society where there is a presumption of innocence until guilt can be proven. So we all have to presume Trey Holly is being honest, that he didn't commit these crimes. And the accusers, the burden of proof falls on them. And it's worth noting, and I did news for several years before I ever got into sports, and there was this old saying that people would use that a jury would indict a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich, meaning it's very easy to get an indictment from a grand jury. A grand jury in North Louisiana did not indict Trey Holly on the second-degree murder charges. That effectively got thrown out. So all he faces are illegal use of a weapon and aggravated criminal damage to property. The more serious charge, the grand jury didn't indict, which is very telling because it is an indictment isn't a conviction. It's just bringing charges. They said there wasn't enough evidence even to bring charges to pursue this any further, which is stunning and certainly a big win for Trey Holly. Well, Brian Kelly, at the end of spring practice, was asked about Trey Holly, and he said this is expected to be adjudicated and resolved in April. A month after that, we know there was a delay. The judge in the case, who's Gerald Belton, who works on LSU staff. Gerald Belton's father was the judge in the case, had to recuse himself, so the thing got prolonged even further. I asked Brian Kelly at SEC Media Days in July for an update on Trey Holly, and he said they hope to have it done by the end of July. And then that didn't happen, and it got prolonged even further. And so Trey Holly missed the entire football season. as this just continued to get prolonged further and further. And it's really unfortunate because, now I want to be clear, if a crime was committed and he's found guilty, then he should be prosecuted to a fullest extent. However, if he is wrongfully accused and is, as he says, innocent of all these charges, then you have a young guy who's had a year of his life, a year of his prime as a Division I football athlete with earning potential through NIL taken from him. And if you just look at the calendar, July 7th would be just prior, the trial date would be just prior to the start of fall camp, which would be end of July, beginning of August. So if, and here's hoping, sincerely hoping that Trey Holly is not guilty. And if he stands trial and is acquitted, then he would be able to rejoin the LSU football program and would be there in time for fall camp and would be able to play his third season in college, although obviously he didn't play in the 2024 season. And look, Trey Holly has been pretty active on social. He's posted workout videos and things like that. And while he can't be with the team right now, he's continued taking classes online to maintain his eligibility. He's continuing to work out. So reassimilating back into the program should be relatively easy. But the problem for Trey Holly is that in his absence, the team has had to continue building the running back room. And now it's kind of a loaded room. So keep in mind, Josh Williams graduated, so he's out of eligibility. But Caden Durham returns for a sophomore year. And this was a guy that was a freshman All-America a season ago. Caleb Jackson also returns for his third season in Baton Rouge, a guy that you would anticipate would probably take a step up this year. And you signed two running backs in this cycle. Harlem Berry, who's the number one running back in the country, and then JT Lindsey, another kid from Louisiana, who's a top 10 running back in the country. So that's Caden Durham, Caleb Jackson, Harlem Berry, JT Lindsey. That's 4 scholarship running backs. Trey Holly would be 5. Now, keep in mind also, LSU has 4 walk-on running backs. And before you roll your eyes, Malachi Lane's been around for a while, as has Joseph Eboon. The other 2, however, are very interesting. DK Cansey, who played at Shaw in New Orleans on the West Bank, went to Penn State and just transferred to LSU from Penn State. And then Reed Chauvin is a kid from Episcopal in Baton Rouge who is a very good athlete, probably not Power 4 scholarship worthy, but very similar at the running back position to what we talked about with Emil Picarella at quarterback from U High. In a different era, probably a scholarship quarterback at a G5 school. But with the transfer portal, what you're seeing is G5 schools taking transfers from the Power 5 instead of taking freshmen from the high school ranks. So you're seeing guys like this maybe not have a place to go. So do they go play JUCO or Division II, or do they walk on at a place like LSU? So Reed Chauvin from Episcopal in Baton Rouge is walking on. So you've got 4 scholarship running backs, 4 walk-ons, 2 of whom have, FBS potential, before we even start talking about Trey Holly. So your numbers at running back are strong. The real question is, will there be room for Trey Holly when he returns, especially with Harlem Berry coming back? And remember, Trey Holly isn't an also-ran. Trey Holly in his in his high school career, rushed for over 10,000 yards. He set the Louisiana high school career rushing record when he was at Union Parish in Farmerville. He broke Nick Brissett's record by 2,000 yards. It's incredible to think of that. But that's the kind of player he is and the kind of athlete that he is. So look, Trey Holly in 2023 as a freshman had 10 carries or 11 carries for 111 yards and a touchdown. Had the long touchdown run against Army. He's a guy that can factor in some way, no doubt. And remember also, Juwan Johnson, who's playing quarterback in spring, but could very well move back to running back after spring when your quarterback room loads up again. Just something worth filing away. The good news, the end is near for Trey Holly. The trial's been set for July 7th. There's a couple of pre-trial hearings in one May 21st, one June 25th. So maybe this finishes even before then. But then the other part of it is Trey Holly is going to be joining a stacked running back room. And is there even a spot for him anymore? We'll continue to follow it. Caleb Jackson could be an interesting one to follow as well, as a guy that hasn't made an impact really in 2 years. Does he hang around for this season? Does he enter the portal after spring? I'm not saying I know anything, but it's just something worth keeping an eye on as we move through it. But Trey Holly's situation, finally, there's a trial date set, and the end is near. One thing we know for sure is that Garrett Nussmeier will be LSU's quarterback. So where does he fit among the top returning quarterbacks in the country for 2025? This might interest you. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel and the live betting feature. It keeps every moment of the game exciting. If you're backing your team for a late game rally or you're picking a player to hit a clutch three, you never miss your chance. So, plus, the app, by the way, is also easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the running back position will be interesting to follow how it develops, especially if Trey Holly returns. The quarterback position we know is set. Garrett Nussmeier, who threw for 4,000 yards a year ago, the leading returning passer in college football for 2025, is back. And the conversation, I was having this conversation actually with Chuck Oliver. If you're not familiar, Chuck Oliver's show is it's basically daily college football show based out of Atlanta with the King, Chuck Oliver, and it's syndicated on 70 radio stations throughout the Southeast. And I was having this conversation with Chuck about Garrett Nussmeier and the expectation. And it's interesting from what the national perspective may be and what the Baton Rouge perspective or the LSU perspective may be, because here the conversation is, hey, look, Joe Burrow in 2018 was kind of a guy, threw for 2,000 yards. It was okay, better late than it was early. In 2019, as a fifth-year senior and his second year as a starter, kaboom. Jaden Daniels in 2022 was a good player, very functional within LSU's offense, on a bad offensive line. But in 2023, kaboom, Heisman winner. We can even talk about Zach Mettenberger. 2012, okay. 2013, 3,000-yard passer. So a lot of people here are thinking, okay, the kaboom for Garrett Nussmeier is coming in his fifth season and second as a starter, like we saw with Mettenberger, Burrow, and Daniels. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Nationally, I'm not sure everyone is as high on Garrett Nussmeier as maybe we are. And that's probably a product and a symptom of just being a little too close, to the forest. The old adage, you can't see the forest through the trees. But Pro Football Focus put out a list, and I don't love lists, by the way. I don't subscribe to lists. I think it's just a launching point for conversation. Everybody's argument, everybody's opinion, everybody's conversation is rooted in some different form of criteria. And so Pro Football Focus put out a list of the top 10 returning quarterbacks in college football. Well, if you're talking about guys that are elite level players that are coming back for another year, then this is like you're judging a beauty contest. I mean, they're all pretty. Just which one do you prefer? It's like ice cream. I mean, is there really a bad flavor? It's just preference. I mean, like my dad likes Rocky Road. I'm not super high on that. My wife loves mint chocolate chip. I love this thing called Americone Dream that's from Ben and Jerry's. Like everybody's just got their own flavor, their own preference, and there's nothing bad. It's just you pick what you like. And so it's kind of like that. But for the sake of the conversation, Pro Football Focus had Cade Klubnik from Clemson, number 1, Sam Levitt from Arizona State, number 2, Carson Beck at Miami, number 3, followed by Drew Aller at Penn State, 4, and then Garrett Nussmeier, 5. The second half of the list, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway, Diego Pavia, Nico Iamaleava, and Kevin Jennings from SMU. They did throw in an honorable mention for Taylor Green from Arkansas. So of note on this list, of course, is that you play Cade Klubnik in week 1. You play DJ Lagway of Florida. You play Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt. And you play Taylor Green from Arkansas. So 4 of the 11, and one of them is your quarterback. So really 4 of the 10 you play this year. So that sort of suggests that it could be a tougher year for LSU against very good quarterbacks. But what I would actually submit is 2 things. Number 1, aside from the road game at Clemson to open the season, I don't know that LSU is an underdog in any other game this year. Like, yes, you're going to play Texas. Florida. DJ Lagway and Florida have to come to Baton Rouge. Well, DJ Lagway threw almost as many interceptions as touchdowns as a true freshman. While he's a 5-star and has maybe a very high ceiling, he was just not very consistent or good and didn't protect the football. Diego Pavia was very good. Now you have to go to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia was very good, but he's also limited physically. Taylor Green, Arkansas, they have to come to Baton Rouge. I don't think anyone is concerned about Taylor Green coming into Baton Rouge this year. So, and maybe you run up against Arch in the conference championship game. We'll see. But I look at this list and I go, is there, like, this is the way I looked at it. I looked at that list, at the 11 players on the list, and thought, all right, is there anybody on that list that I would take over Garrett Nussmeier? Now, Klubnik's interesting because Cade Klubnik last year at Clemson had 36 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions. So that ratio is incredible. That was also a 3-loss Clemson team that needed a miracle with Miami choking against Clemson to get into the ACC championship game, which of course they won, and then advanced to the college football playoff. But Klubnik's a former 5-star who's going to his 4th year in college and his 2nd full-time season as a starter. I was looking at this going, is there anybody on this list that I would take over Nussmeier? Klubnik's close. Levitt, I think, played well, but it's hard to buy into Levitt just because of the level of competition at Arizona State. Carson Beck at Miami is coming off UCL surgery. Drew Aller, I mean, we have seen Drew Aller against elite level competition, like what we saw in the college football playoff when they lost to Notre Dame. Like, he's not capable of beating teams with his arm. Nuss is 5, Arch is 6. Arch only has 95 career attempts. So, like, maybe Arch is great, but there's not nearly enough sample size to know. DJ Lagway, if you gave me Lagway over 3 years, maybe by the end of the next 3 years, he's better than Nussmeier. But if we're just talking about 2025 and you gave me Nussmeier or Lagway, give me the 5th-year senior. Diego Pavia, again, limited. Nico, all the arm talent in the world, but that was a Tennessee offense that really struggled a year ago, especially in the first half of games. Kevin Jennings, I think, is a great athlete, dynamic runner and passer, but also a guy, when you consider the competition in the ACC, when he went and played against Penn State in the college football playoff, I don't know if he choked or was just outmatched, but he was terrible. And then we saw LSU throttle and bottle Taylor Green last year. All that to say, if those are the 11 best returning quarterbacks in the country, I don't know that there's any I would take over Garrett Nussmeier. And one of the things that I always say and look at, if there's a coin flip game and I'm not sure which way to pick, there's 3 criteria I look at. Venue, coach, quarterback. We'll look at all the games that I just mentioned against quarterbacks on that list. The only one that you're traveling to are Clemson and Vanderbilt. Well, you're going to be favored at Vanderbilt. And Clemson is going to be iffy. Now, Clemson gets the value of the venue. Dabo or Brian Kelly, Dabo's won 2 national titles. You probably give him the edge. And then Klubnik or Nuss is a little bit of a toss-up there between those two. And at Clemson, you might pick Klubnik. So I kind of understand why Clemson is the favorite in that game, but I still don't know that over 12 games I would take anyone other than Garrett Nussmeier. Maybe I'm leaning a little bit into the history and what fifth-year senior quarterbacks have done at LSU in their second year as a starter. But, man, hard to argue against Garrett Nussmeier and what he might be in 2025. And whatever we anticipate LSU being in 2025, Garrett Nussmeier has got to be the one that takes him there. All right, as we put a button here on today's episode of Locked On LSU, Tiger baseball team is back at it. They'll take on Omaha. Omaha! Shout out Peyton Manning. 3-game series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Friday game is at 4 p.m. Central Time, Saturday at 2 o'clock, Sunday at 1 o'clock, all at Alec Box Stadium, Skip Bertman Field. And LSU has declared the pitching rotation. It'll be the same as last week. And I get it. There's no reason to change. What you did last weekend worked exceptionally well. So Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, Chase Shore. So you go lefty, righty, righty. All 3 got the win in their start a week ago against Purdue Fort Wayne. For me, though, I think it's going to be more interesting to see what they do out of the bullpen after those 3 starters. The one guy we haven't seen pitch yet is Gavin Guidry. Jay Johnson said on Thursday that Guidry would have pitched against Nichols. I think we know that. He would have started. And he was asked point blank, so does that mean you're holding Guidry to Monday to start against Nichols? Remember, LSU plays Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and because of the cancellation against Nichols, they're going to play at the box against Nichols on Monday, and then on April the 8th, LSU will go play at Nichols down in Thibodaux. But we're likely to see a lot of those one-inning assassins this weekend churning out after your starters of Anderson, Ianson, and Shores. And the guy that I'm most interested to see, I'm telling you, it's probably the guy who was probably the guy that was the first out of the bullpen the entire weekend. And, Kaysen Evans was, the freshman out of Texas, was so impressive first out of the bullpen. 6'2", 194, pumping, 98 miles an hour. It's hard to ignore that. And I want to see if he can replicate that success again this weekend. Now, LSU's playing Omaha for the first time ever. Omaha are the Mavericks. Interestingly, there's a synergy here because when LSU was at the College World Series in 2023, when they won the national championship, LSU that season, that College World Series, practiced at Omaha. So they were at Omaha's field. Maybe this is a little bit of a hat tip. Thank you so much for letting us use your field 2 years ago in the College World Series when we were up there. So LSU takes on Omaha. The Mavericks opened up last weekend in New Orleans where they were swept by Tulane. And then they went on Tuesday down to Thibodaux to play Nichols. So they were swept by Tulane Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tuesday, they beat Nichols 5-2. Now they come to Baton Rouge. So in 4 games, they're hitting .288 with just 3 homers in 4 games. Henry Zippy is the guy that you need to watch. He is hitting .583 through 4 games with a double and 2 RBI. Also, infielder, outfielder Jackson Trout hitting .375 with a double, a homer, and a team-high 6 RBI. So Henry Zippy and Jackson Trout are the 2 bats that you're probably going to want to know about Omaha going in. From an LSU perspective, which is far more interesting, clearly I'm looking at right field and catcher. What are you doing at right field? What are you doing behind the plate? We saw LSU this weekend start Hernandez game 1, Aaron Beatty game 2, Hernandez game 3. Midweek against Southern, they started Aaron Beatty. That would mean Hernandez likely would get the start on Friday, which is what I assume they'll do. And then what are you doing right? Are you starting Jake Brown? Are you starting Josh Pearson? We've seen Ashton Larson start one game this year, and it was the Sunday game, but at DH. So it seems likely that they've narrowed down the catcher spot to Hernandez, Aaron Beatty for now. And in right field, they've narrowed it down to Brown and Pearson for now, with Larson having an opportunity to DH and maybe play some right field as a defensive replacement. So we'll continue to learn more about this team. Next weekend will be dramatically more interesting. Next week, of course, LSU is going to go play Dallas Baptist in the midweek at Globe Life Field. And then after they play Dallas Baptist on Wednesday, they're going to go up to Frisco and have a 3-game series where they'll play Kansas State, Nebraska, and Sam Houston. So next week, we're going to learn much more about this LSU baseball team. In the meantime, they'll play an overmatched Omaha team. Hopefully the Tigers go out there, throw strikes, hit the baseball, and get another 3 dubs as they move on to next week. And of course, all season long, we'll be talking about it right here on Locked on LSU. Hey, I am planning on doing a live recap episode after the baseball games this weekend. So make sure you join us for that right here on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Now for your second listen, how about the Locked on College Basketball podcast with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton? Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked on College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, if you are listening on podcasts, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.